Love and wisdom before and after the Bible. I was born in Costa Rica in a Catholic environment that shaped me profoundly. From a young age, before I even turned 20, I was deeply influenced by Christian thinkers who revealed to me the depth of our tradition. Saint Augustine of Hippo, Saint Thomas Aquinas, Saint Francis of Assisi, and later Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. From Augustine, I learned that the spiritual journey begins within, that our hearts are restless until they rest in God. From Aquinas, I discovered that faith and reason are not enemies but partners, both leading us toward divine wisdom. From Francis of Assisi, I received the gift of tenderness, love for all creation, from the poorest human being to the humblest creature. And from Teilhard de Chardin, I saw the universe as a living act of evolution toward love, what he called the omega point, the ultimate union of all beings in divine consciousness. Teilhard wrote that one day humanity would harness for God the energies of love, and on that day, for a second time in history, we will have discovered fire. And he was right. Love has always been the evolutionary fire of consciousness. But as I matured and expanded my culture, something troubled me deeply enough that now I have to talk about it. Many Christians, often well-meaning, believe that compassion, forgiveness, and moral conscience arrived for the first time with the Bible. That before Jesus, or Moses, or Abraham, the world was lost in chaos, ignorance, and sin, because the divine light has always shone throughout human history, under 1,000 names and forms. What follows will surprise some of you. In ancient India, the Vedas, among humanity's oldest sacred texts, teach that compassion, humility, and truth are the natural traits of the divine within us. One Vedic verse says that God is compassion. He is grace personified. A heart filled with compassion is the temple in which God likes to dwell. The Vedas proclaim that love, tolerance, and non-attachment are the highest human virtues, the signs of a divine nature shining through form. Later in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna placed compassion at the center of an integrated spiritual life. In chapter 16, he lists the divine qualities of the awakened soul: fearlessness, purity of mind, steadfastness in spiritual knowledge, charity, control of the senses, sacrifice, study of the sacred books, austerity, and straightforwardness, nonviolence, truthfulness, absence of anger, renunciation, peacefulness, restraint from fault-finding, compassion toward all living beings, absence of covetousness, gentleness, modesty, and lack of fickleness, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, bearing enmity toward none, and absence of vanity. Who wouldn't agree with that? Krishna also taught karma yoga, the yoga of selfless service. You have a right to perform your prescribed duties, but you are not entitled to the fruits of your actions. Never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities, nor be attached to inaction. In other words, true love is not sentiment, but free action done for its own sake. Acting without selfish desire, one becomes a vessel of divine will. And true wisdom, Krishna said, is to see oneself in all beings and all beings in oneself. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, verse 29, Krishna declares, "A true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. Indeed, the self-realized person sees me, the same Supreme Lord, everywhere." This realization of perceiving the divine reflected in every heart and every life calls us to awaken beyond mere ritual, to recognize God not in abstraction, but in the silent presence within every face we encounter and within the deepest part of ourselves. Doesn't this resonate with the first and second commandments Jesus taught? To love God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself? When Jesus taught that these two laws are the essence of all Scripture, Matthew 22:37-40, and Krishna called us to see the Lord in all beings, both were pointing to the same universal truth. Love is the means by which we know God, and loving one another is inseparable from loving the divine. This unifying vision of God all-pervading, of love as the thread connecting the sacred within us to the sacred in others, lies at the center of all authentic traditions. It invites us, whatever our background, to open our eyes to God with us, manifest both in the world, in ourselves, and in the neighbor we are called to love. This simple verse contains the heart of universal ethics. Compassion arises not from obligation, but from realization that we are one life experiencing itself in many forms. In ancient Persia, a millennium before Jesus, Zoroaster proclaimed the supremacy of Ahura Mazda, the spirit of light and truth. He called humanity to a moral life defined by 3 golden precepts: good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. For Zoroaster, each human soul participates in the cosmic struggle between truth, Asha, and falsehood, Druj. To choose goodness is to ally oneself with the light, and he foretold a future renewal of the world, Frashokareti, where evil is overcome and creation is restored in divine perfection. This vision profoundly shaped Jewish and Christian eschatology. In Greece, Socrates met his death for speaking inconvenient truth. He called people to awaken their souls and examine their lives. His reverence for truth and moral integrity led him to accept death calmly rather than disown his calling. Accused of corrupting the youth and introducing unfamiliar gods, he was sentenced to drink hemlock, a deadly poison, and accepted it serenely, like Jesus accepting his cross. Both spoke of an immortal soul and of the higher law of conscience. Both believed it better to suffer wrong than to commit it. They died for the same eternal principle, that truth, love, and virtue cannot be killed. In China, Confucius and Lao Tzu guided humanity toward moral and spiritual order. Confucius said, "Do not do to others what you would not wish for yourself," centuries before the Christian Golden Rule. Lao Tzu, the author of the Tao Te Ching, taught the sacred path of the Tao, the way, emphasizing humility, simplicity, and compassion. The soft overcomes the hard, the yielding overcomes the rigid. He understood that divine power flows not from domination, but from harmony with nature's rhythms. In Asia's Far East, Japanese spirituality fused Zen and Bushido into a noble moral ideal. Zen taught mindfulness, emptiness, sunyata, and self-mastery, not of others, but of one's own mind. Bushido, the way of the warrior, integrated those principles into daily conduct. The synthesis created a spiritual code rooted in righteousness, Gi, courage, Yu, benevolence, Jin, respect, Rei, honesty, Makoto, honor, Meyu, and loyalty, Chugi. Each quality evoked inner serenity and the ability to act justly, even at the cost of life, an echo of Jesus' own teaching that greater love has no one than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. Beneath these values also flows the spirit of Shinto, Japan's native path of reverence toward nature. In Shinto, all of life, mountains, rivers, winds, ancestors, is animated by kami, spiritual presences that deserve respect. Harmony with people and with nature, wa in Japanese thought, is practiced as a sacred art, the art of living gracefully among all beings. Crossing to the other side of the world, indigenous civilizations of the Americas lived by their own high spiritual laws. The Anishinaabe people upheld the 7 grandfather teachings: love, respect, bravery, truth, honesty, humility, and wisdom. Among the Lakota, the great visionary Black Elk taught, at the center of the universe dwells the Great Spirit. And that center is everywhere. It is within each of us. He saw life as a sacred circle, interconnected, eternal, and wounded when any part is harmed. Healing humanity meant restoring that circle, recognizing our oneness with all beings. Prophets like Handsome Lake, Tenskwatawa, and Wovoka of the Paiute brought messages of moral renewal, forgiveness, and peace, teaching that balance, not superiority, is the essence of spiritual life. In Mesoamerica, the Toltec path speaks of life as a dream we can learn to awaken within. Drawing from this lineage, modern Toltec teachings remind us that our suffering is largely created by the agreements we unconsciously make with fear, shame, and judgment, and that we can reclaim our freedom by choosing new agreements rooted in truth, responsibility, and love. At the heart of this wisdom is the invitation to become impeccable with our word, to stop taking things personally, to stop making assumptions, and to always do our best. Simple principles that dissolve separation and guide us back to our authentic self. Toltec wisdom is not about adopting a new belief system, but about undoing the conditioning that keeps us from recognizing that love is our natural state. The ancient Mayan world also carried a profound sense of a living, interconnected cosmos in which earth, underworld, and heavens are woven together by a single sacred energy. For many contemporary Maya keepers of the tradition, spirituality is cultivated from the heart, and all that exists, humans, animals, plants, and even the elements, has chulel, a spirit or heart that comes from the sacred. Through communal altars, offerings, and prayers, people are invited to ask, "How has your heart arrived in this place?" Speaking heart to heart and remembering that we belong to a larger community of divine creation. In the ancestral wisdom of the Americas, indigenous elders also carried a profound understanding of the sacred. From the Lakota vision of Black Elk to the Hopi prophecies to the teachings of the Andean peoples and the Amazonian guardians of the forest, we find the same call to live in harmony with the earth, to honor all our relations, and to recognize spirit in every creature and every element of nature. For them, the land itself is a Bible written in mountains, rivers, stars, and living beings. In the heart of Mesoamerica, long before the arrival of Europeans, the Maya also preserved a sacred book of wisdom, the Popol Vuh, the book of the community of the Quichua people. It tells how humans were formed from maize, linking our very flesh to the living earth and to the food that sustains us, and it portrays a universe in which mountains, animals, plants, and humans all share a sacred aliveness and are meant to live in reciprocity and gratitude with the invisible powers that created them. The stories of the hero twins who confront the lords of death through courage, intelligence, and self-sacrifice echo the same victory of love, loyalty, and humble courage over fear and domination that we see in the life and death of Jesus. In a different language and symbolism, the Popol Vuh proclaims that life is sacred, that our relationships matter, and that true humanity is measured by our ability to remember, to give thanks, and to live in harmony with all that exists. Tragically, during the conquest, most of the sacred books of the Maya and many other indigenous civilizations were burned or destroyed by those who came, allegedly in the name of Christ, yet acted in direct contradiction to his teachings. As a result, only a few precious texts, such as the Popol Vuh, survived as witnesses to this ancient current of wisdom. To truly honor Jesus today, I believe we must also repent for that destruction, open our hearts to these indigenous voices, and recognize that the same spirit of love and truth has been speaking through their stories as well. I myself only encountered the Popol Vuh much later in life, and when I began to read it, I felt the same fragrance of sacred wisdom I had sensed in the Bible, the Vedas, and the teachings of the great masters. Further south, in the Amazon, many indigenous peoples understand the forest itself as a great university of consciousness, where plants are teachers and allies. Among the Shipibo and other nations, ayahuasca, often called the vine of the soul, is revered as a master medicine that can open spiritual vision, reveal hidden aspects of the self, and reconnect us with the divine intelligence permeating nature. Through diets with sacred plants, icaros, healing songs, and guided ceremonies, curanderos learn to work with the spirits and frequencies of the plants to heal body, mind, and soul, reminding us that true medicine is not only chemical, but also energetic and spiritual. These plants don't just randomly alter our awareness, they are called psychedelic because Canadian psychiatrist Humphrey Osmond coined the word from the Greek psyche, meaning soul, and delaun, meaning to reveal. Used properly, as part of an integrative approach and a healthy lifestyle, they help us reveal our emotional wounds, our trauma, our conditioning, and also our true nature by purifying, detoxifying, and deparasitizing our bodies and minds. Personally, I want my soul to be revealed again and again, to prevent my ego from running my life, and to let love and courage, not fear, inspire my decisions. So when someone says that without the Bible, humanity would be lost, I ask them, what about all these teachers, these prophets, these cultures that knew love before they ever heard the name of Christ? Were they godless, or were they simply guided by another name for the same eternal light? Jesus did not invent love, he embodied it. His message intended to liberate those bound to the old laws of sacrifice and exclusion rooted in the Old Testament, 2 Corinthians 3. The essence of his teaching, compassion, forgiveness, and the equality of souls, was revolutionary and deeply disruptive to the established leadership in Galilee, including the Pharisees, other Jewish religious authorities, the scribes, and even the Romans, because it challenged strict ritual, hierarchical mediation, and the very foundations of their status and control. Yet the spirit of his message existed already across continents and centuries before his birth. That is why I say, I am a disciple not only of Jesus, but of all the masters of peace. Because the truth is not exclusive. It is the song of the human spirit, seeking the source from which it came. The divine has spoken through many voices, through scripture, through silence, through the rivers and the wind, through the heart of every being who has loved selflessly. Teilhard de Chardin said that creation is rising toward one destiny, the convergence of all consciousness in love, what he called the Christogenesis of the cosmos. And this truth burns brightly in the words of the Bhagavad Gita, in the still ponds of Zen, in the chants of the Vedas, in the prayers of Black Elk, in the teachings of Baha'u'llah, the communion with Pachamama, and in the heart of every awakened soul on earth. So let us not claim that only our tradition holds the truth. Let us live the truth in humility, respect, and love for everyone. For only when we see God in all traditions and all beings can we truly understand what it means to love as Jesus loved. After the Bible, other masters and inspired individuals have continued the flow of wisdom, bringing not only messages of love and compassion, but also living methods for connecting with the divine directly, without intermediaries. We are shown ways to perceive the divine reflected in every face around us. Not only spiritual teachers, but also musicians, poets, and artists of every kind can move us to open our hearts and elevate our spirits. If God is love, then the deepest love we feel for humanity and creation is itself connection to God, an experience that surpasses words, labels, religions, and institutions. In this view, the spiritual journey is not confined to dogma, but lived through the very essence of love and unity. Yet, there is a force that works tirelessly to make us forget this truth. The scriptures describe it as Satan, the great divider, the enemy of unity, and therefore the enemy of love itself. For Jews, it may be Shedim, for Muslims, Iblis, in the Vedic tradition, Maya. Every tradition gives it a name, but its work is the same. This entity surely plays an essential role in the human experience, especially in Christian thought, representing the enslavement of sin and, in a broader sense, our ongoing cycle of fear, conflict, suffering, and spiritual stagnation. Yet, when we awaken and place our trust in the higher power, we begin to see through the lies and mirages of egocentrism, recognizing the true source of freedom is within. From a psychological or less religious lens, Satan is much like a mind parasite or archetype, a symbol for the collective forces that feed on human pain, division, and emotional energy. For Satan's oldest and most effective tactic has always been division between peoples, religions, cultures, even within the same faith. As early Christian thinkers observed, the very word devil means to divide. When human beings begin to see each other not as brothers and sisters, but as strangers, as immoral, inferior, or godless, then the adversary triumphs. Division turns believers against believers, families against families, left against right, nations against nations. It distracts us from healing the world and refocuses our energy on judging one another. This is precisely what Jesus warned against when he said, "Love your enemies, bless those who curse you, and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven." He knew that hatred, even in the name of religion, is the seed of hell on earth. Satan doesn't need to destroy humanity outright, only to make us forget the spirit of Jesus' words. He whispers that we are right and others are wrong, that our group is pure and others are wicked. And through that illusion, love fractures into pride, faith hardens into dogma, and religion turns into rivalry. But if we can recognize this ancient strategy, if we see that the real enemy of humanity is not flesh and blood, but hatred, deception, and fear, we can reclaim our divine power. Because the kingdom of heaven cannot be built by condemning the world, but by transforming ourselves. It saddens me to see that many who call themselves Christians, Muslims, Jews, or who belong to any tradition, close themselves off to other sources of wisdom and inspiration. In my decades of life, I recognize that humanity is in the midst of yet another phase in its recurring cycles of awakening, periods when collective consciousness stirs, breaks through old patterns, and seeks higher meaning. Throughout history, such cycles have followed times of apathy or crisis with new bursts of spiritual creativity and renewal as each generation encounters the divine anew. I am saddened to see my friends from either side misunderstand and judge each other. That's not truly Christian, nor wise in my opinion. But I recenter in my peace and remember that it's their journey, not mine. I have the responsibility to be a mediator between individuals, groups, generations, religions, and cultures because we have been divided for too long to promote and facilitate dialogue. I just have to do my part to share the same old message in a new way and walk my talk. That is the meaning behind the often quoted words attributed to Mahatma Gandhi. Be the change you want to see in the world. In reality, Gandhi wrote, "We but mirror the world. All the tendencies present in the outer world are to be found in our own hearts. If we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change." This echoes the spiritual law of every great teacher, from the Buddha to Jesus, from Lao Tzu to St. Francis, that outer peace must begin within. Our task, then, is not merely to debate doctrines or convert others, but to embody love so completely that it becomes contagious. To live as subjects of the kingdom of heaven here on earth, wherever we are, as peacemakers, healers, reconcilers, and builders of bridges rather than walls. Call our mutual adversary Satan, Maya, or simple ignorance. Whatever the name, it is the same illusion that feeds ego and separation. And our greatest spiritual defense is not argument but awakening, not condemnation but compassion, not conflict but dialogue. The kingdom Jesus spoke of is not in some distant realm or future. It is within and among us when we choose to live by divine love. When we see the sacred in everyone, we break the power of division. When we forgive, we silence evil's most powerful tool. And when we act with humility and courage for peace, we become living citizens of heaven on earth. For the light of God has never belonged to one prophet alone. It shines through all hearts that remember who we truly are, children of one spirit, instruments of one love, creators of one destiny, a united humanity guided not by fear, but by awakening. So, stay open and curious, and keep learning like children from all those sources that share a loving message, and use all the tools available to support your direct connection to the one God with many names. Don't let any group or propaganda tell you what others think or believe, but see by yourselves, because what Satan wants is for us to fear one another, for Christians or Jews to fear Muslims and so on. He wants conservatives to fear liberals and liberals to fear conservatives. When we label people, we judge them by groups, and we don't see individuals, and we are fooled by propaganda to prevent dialogue and realizing who the real enemies are. The media tell us what the targeted group thinks. They tell us what conspiracy theorists think, what leftists think, what right-wingers think, and so on, so we don't listen to anybody else than those in our echo chamber, whatever it is. The wicked king of this materialistic world wants us to close our hearts, to judge and label other individuals without even knowing them, and to value some lives over others, as if all lives, especially innocent ones, did not have the same worth, and as if a person's value depended on where they were born or the religion they were raised with. The profiteers of chaos want us to label and judge others, and to identify ourselves as part of a better group, race, religion, or non-religious ideology, conservative, progressive, or whatever. We better see the humanity in each individual instead of the label. This reminds me of a soul-revealing session where a client once said with genuine joy, "I'm happy to be a Jew." I replied, "I am so happy to be a Goy, but in fact, I am so happy to be human." And of course, we both smiled. In these moments of recognition, we move beyond our inherited identities toward the deeper joy of simply being, embracing who we are, where we come from, while celebrating the unique beauty of each tradition, allowing us to see ourselves and one another as part of a larger human family. When we shed judgment and attachment to differences, we open to the possibility of true communion, rooted in the shared mystery at the heart of all spiritual paths. In another powerful conversation, someone surprised me by saying, "You are a Muslim." He didn't mean it as a label tied to a particular religion or tradition. Instead, he explained that, in the deepest sense, Muslim means one who surrenders in peace to the will of God, to live with humility, openness, trust, and compassion, aligning oneself with the will of the divine. For him, these qualities are universal. Anyone who lives in this spirit is, by nature, fulfilling what it truly means to be Muslim, regardless of background or culture. This encounter reminded me how true spiritual identity transcends names, traditions, and heritage, revealing our underlying kinship and the shared path of the heart. I invite you to open your heart and pause to re-examine any biases or assumptions you may hold about other groups, religions, or paths. When we stop listening with charity to anyone, making ad hominem judgments or dismissing them for who they are rather than what they say, we miss the opportunity to expand our awareness. Even a liar or someone deluded may at times speak the truth. This is precisely how propaganda works. By suppressing our willingness to listen and shutting down our openness to unexpected insights. True wisdom means remaining open and discerning, never closing our hearts or minds out of prejudice or defensiveness. We no longer need to limit ourselves to prescribed authorities, religious or otherwise, who are themselves still bound to the ways of this world. Our deepest guidance is found within, and truth, when spoken by anyone, no matter how humble or unrecognized, can be directly discerned by a heart attuned to love and authenticity. Now, more than ever, we have countless pathways for connecting to Source, the wellspring of divinity underlying all authentic spiritual traditions. The truth need not be dictated. Loving guidance can illuminate the way. Ultimately, sincere seekers have direct access through practices such as prayer, meditation, devotional service, breath work, emotional healing, yoga, shamanic rituals, satsangs, retreats, sacred sexuality, psychedelic therapy, mindful relationships, heart-centered methods, expressive movement, and the vibrant spiritual gatherings found across the world. Many traditions also honor the transformative power of fasting and conscious abstention, whether through temporary or permanent restrictions such as avoiding meat, abstaining from certain foods or combinations, or observing periods of discipline, celibacy, silence, and purification. These practices foster mindfulness, self-mastery, and a deeper sense of connection to the divine, reflecting a shared spiritual wisdom that transcends boundaries. These communal and individual rituals, practices, and celebrations, whether in the silence of meditation, the discipline of fasting, the exuberance of music, or the mindful embrace of abstention, often bring us into a heightened state of presence and aliveness. This is the feeling known as enthusiasm, whose roots go back to the Greek entheos, meaning in God or having the God within. In these sacred moments, we tap into the divine spark, experiencing an inspiration that is both spiritual and deeply human, a universal joy at the heart of all authentic traditions. Among these countless pathways, joyful celebrations stand out as living expressions of communion with the divine. Whether it's the exuberant singing and worship of Pentecostal and gospel communities, the harmonies shared in charismatic Catholic gatherings, the contemplative chants of Taizé, the devotional kirtans of Hindu traditions, the festive songs of Jewish Sabbath, or the rhythmic dances of native ceremonies, singing is a powerful bridge, unifying hearts and voices in sacred ritual. Across cultures, this musical celebration reveals the divine presence that is always here, inviting everyone into a circle of joy, belonging, and spiritual connection. Beyond traditional religious settings, concerts like Krishna Das, Snatan Kaur, Deva Premal, Mirabai Cheba, Ajit Kaur, and many more, and transformational gatherings such as Shambhala Music Festival, Sunflower Garden Festival in Canada, High Vibe Festival, and Bhakti Festival in the U.S., and Buddha Field in the U.K. reveal that authentic spirituality can emerge wherever people come together with the intention of growth and fearless exploration. These events cultivate peace, love, creativity, and unity, uniting diverse communities not just in celebration, but in a shared journey of awakening, healing, and personal empowerment. The process of transformation, opening up to oneself, others, and new possibilities, is in itself a spiritual experience, dissolving boundaries and nurturing deeper presence, connection, and transcendence, regardless of cultural or religious background. Because when we are fearless and centered in our hearts, our eyes can see beyond labels and prejudices. We witness the genuine presence of peace and compassion, whether people are dressed in suits and ties, or shirtless and barefoot in the grass, or even in the mud. What matters is not the outer appearance or tradition, but the inner sincerity and the loving energy that binds us together. Now that we recognize the abundance of paths to the divine and how much we have in common, there is no need to cling exclusively to any single tradition or community, nor to judge other groups or spiritual paths as misguided or evil. Beyond our religious or spiritual identities, we are all united by a deeper reality, a shared longing for truth, belonging, and connection. When we appreciate the richness of diverse practices and beliefs, we move beyond division, embracing the universal wisdom at the heart of every tradition. In doing so, we honor both our own journey and the journeys of others, trusting that the source is vast enough to welcome every sincere seeker. The Baal Shem Tov, the Jewish mystical rabbi who founded Hasidic Judaism in the 18th century, taught that the ideal of man is to be a revelation himself, meaning every person can manifest the divine, not just scholars or religious authorities. Their diversity mirrors the vastness of the human spirit's expressions. Each in their own way, they echo the words of Jesus, "Truly, truly, I tell you, whoever believes in me will also do the works that I do, and greater works than these will he do, because I am going to the Father." John 14:12. Let us remember the journey of spiritual awakening is ever renewing, personal, and accessible to all who seek with open hearts. By becoming conscious and discerning, we are no longer enslaved to these cycles of pride and misery, but empowered to move toward unity and compassion. Embrace curiosity. Much of what we've been taught about history and about one another has been incomplete, misunderstood, or distorted. If we look with honesty and wonder, we may discover that the deepest truths and greatest joys connect us all, regardless of the stories or boundaries we've inherited. In awakening, we reclaim our freedom, break the chains of illusion, and return to the source of true love and harmony. So let no institution, group, or media tell you what other individuals, groups, or faiths believe, nor dictate who your role models must be. We all well-meaning individuals and groups, Christians or not, need to recognize and isolate the common enemy of humanity and his worldly representatives. We need to stop feeding parasitic individuals, elites, corporations, and industries with our consumerism. We better stop being poisoned and letting our children get poisoned, misguided, and manipulated. I'm so grateful for having been inspired by other teachers and prophets after Jesus, such as Ellen White, the founder of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, that said, "Anything that lessens physical strength, feebles the mind, and makes it less capable of discriminating between right and wrong." Among the first individuals that inspired me to take care of my nutrition were some kind Adventists I met more than 50 years ago, as well as some yogis. The Bible couldn't talk about the complexity of our present challenges and sophistication of the new tools of our common enemy. We need to read and listen to much more than that. While some individuals keep reading the Bible hundreds of times without getting it, and others like me have also read hundreds of books from different perspectives and sources of wisdom, I came back to the same conclusion Paul of Tarsus shared more than 2,000 years ago in 2 Corinthians chapter 3, that the written letter kills, by the Spirit gives life. All these words I'm sharing do very little if we don't have the experience and inspiration required. For our minds to get it, we have to respect our temple and stop poisoning our bodies and minds. We better stop giving our submission to their corrupt institutions, including the medical system, the military-industrial complex, the junk food industry, and so on. We have to exercise our hearts not on a treadmill, but by practicing love and forgiveness towards those who trigger our reactions. As Jesus said, "If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them." Luke 6:32. I hope you don't think God has stopped speaking to humanity. Today's heroes need not be called prophets. Their significance lies in their capacity to spark our growth, healing, and awakening. I call them consciousness heroes. We don't need to see any of them as flawless, because we only know what we have been told, but I care about if their messages bring more clarity or resonate and make us have a more joyful and empowering experience of life. In another section or video, I want to come back to the issue of wisdom. What can I really offer as new? Hasn't everything spiritual already been said in so many ways and languages? What I actually want is to remind you that your heart can be your own ultimate master if you choose to see reality with different eyes. When you have a real spiritual experience, you don't need more explanations, just like a seasoned musician doesn't need anyone to explain what the ecstasy of playing feels like. And I bet you don't need to be told how joyful we can feel when dancing. That kind of transpersonal experience can cause more transformation than reading countless books. In future videos, I intend to share new insights from personal experience about methods of awakening. At the same time, I also want to expose the increasingly sophisticated ways that the enemies of humanity are operating. I want to debunk many lies we have been told about history, health, nutrition, geopolitics, science, psychology, and more. I practice and promote ways of seeing through the illusion of divisive propaganda and distraction, and of creating dialogue between all well-meaning individuals. I want more people to open their minds to see the extent to which we have been lied to, and to recognize who materially represents the parasitic and destructive forces in this world. Not to spread fear, but to put into practice the beautiful, idealistic messages I'm sharing here. The more we realize how deeply we've been deceived, the healthier and more compassionate toward humanity we can become. Ignoring history and staying oblivious to what is happening in the world will ultimately cost us our vitality. When Jesus said in John 8:32, "The truth shall set you free," it is not only about telling the truth, but about seeking the truth with an open and curious mind. As we lose our openness and curiosity, we also lose vitality, youthfulness, and joy. Recent research even suggests that curiosity in later life can help keep our brain sharp and may protect against conditions like Alzheimer's. As people grow old, especially at my age, we can lose openness and curiosity and become disappointed and critical of the unpleasant changes we see in the world and in our cities. But that perspective is disempowering and incomplete. Reality is more complex than that. If we only focus on the rotting compost, we might miss the flowers and new life emerging from it. There is a lot rotting in front of our eyes: politics, wars, injustice, cruelty, but there is also an unprecedented awakening happening now. We are not the only ones disappointed by this decomposing system. It has been corrupt for millennia, and for a long time most of us did not realize how much worse things were for so many other people. Humanity is the same. When we were younger, we simply didn't know about many of the atrocities happening elsewhere. They were hidden, minimized, or too far from our daily lives to register. Now that more truth is visible, we face a choice: collapse into bitterness, or use this deeper awareness to grow more conscious, more compassionate, and more determined to be part of the awakening rather than just spectators of the decay. Too many of us take for granted the comfort and relative peace we've enjoyed, while millions have been suffering at the same time. So, instead of just complaining, let us choose to be part of an awakened society built on universal values like empathy, truth, dignity, and cooperation. Talking about the present challenges of humanity, every generation has faced its own horrors. Just the scale and methods of evil shift. Today, the tools are more sophisticated, but the pattern is ancient. Unless we bring critical, unsparing perspective to our analysis, we risk seeing only the latest outrage, missing the deeper story and the root of the problem. It's not about accepting the intolerable actions of psychopaths in power. On the contrary, it's about recognizing that their masks are falling. More people see through propaganda and distraction every day. The illusion, the compost of society's rot, can draw all our attention, but if we look closer, flowers persistently bloom from the waste. History, health, politics, science, nutrition, psychology, we're buried in lies and divisive narratives meant to keep us distracted and docile. The solution is radical honesty, dialogue, and putting our ideals into collective action. This means sharing truth and perspective, not just complaints. It means joining those whose eyes are open, those who refuse distraction and refuse to accept oppression and hypocrisy as normal. Beauty exists precisely because of contrast. Awakening isn't comfortable, but it's undeniably real, unavoidable. The more we know where humanity comes from, the more empowering it is to learn from our mistakes. As individuals, we cannot prevent others from suffering and falling into the traps of propaganda and ignorance, but we can awaken ourselves and those who are ready. Many will die still believing we are doomed by CO2-related climate change while ignoring that the same CO2 has been making the earth greener in the last 35 years. Let's be part of the change, sharing truth, love, courage, and practical help whenever and wherever we can. Only then do we earn the right to hope for a world that rises from the compost, no matter how foul the history beneath our feet. Most of us had no idea about the full extent of the cruelty, corruption, greed, and heartlessness of those in power over thousands of years, and even in the last century. If you knew more about it, you might actually feel more grateful for the relative privilege you have now. It is empowering to learn the lessons of history as well as the lessons from our own personal experience so that we can be more free and more joyful. Remember to be respectful towards those who don't look or think like you, no matter how wrong you think they are, because you might learn something new. Share the love, not the fear. Share ideas, good news, listening, hugs, or whatever help you can offer around you. Let's be the change. In the information section of this video, I share the list of those who have brought some light and inspiration, at least for me. Whether they are regarded as prophets or not, it is for me unimportant. Neither they have to be flawless. So now you've heard it, and I hope you got the message. Take this as an invitation to widen your perspective and get inspired by these and other messengers. If you got here, you might have fallen in a rabbit hole better than that of Alice. This was written by Mario Casada in Montreal, Canada. Please like, share this, and subscribe. Have a beautiful day.